Have you ever been in a selling situation where everything seemed to be going really, really well? And then you get towards the end of the meeting and the prospect says something that sounds like this: "I can't afford it." We've all been in that selling situation where we thought things were on track and then suddenly things got derailed because the prospect suddenly shared with us that they simply couldn't afford what we had to offer. Now the question is, what do you say when you hear that? And just as importantly, what do you do before that situation in order to avoid that situation at all costs? In this video, I'm going to show you how to deal with prospects that say, "I can't afford it." Check it out. So there is a little note that I want to share with you that once the prospect has said, "I can't afford it," you're going to be in trouble. So most of this video is actually going to be on helping you to avoid the prospect from ever saying it in the first place. That's the key. You want to avoid this situation at all costs. Once they've said it, I'll share with you some ideas at the end of this video as to how you can deal with it, but ultimately you want to be avoiding it. Let's dive in. Number one, assess who you're selling to right now. Now, this is a cop-out answer in some ways, but sometimes you're simply just selling to the wrong person. You know, one of the sayings that one of my mentors used to always say is that the person who needs your solution the most is likely the person who can't afford it. If you're dealing with prospects who simply have no money, you're going to hear that a lot, and there's not going to be a lot that you can do. In today's insane marketplace, there are simply organizations that don't have money. There are people that don't have money. You want to be selling to people who are likely to at least be able to afford your solution in the first place. Number two, discuss their critical challenges. When someone says, "I can't afford your solution," or "I can't afford it," what they're really saying is, "I don't see enough value in what you're offering for me to reach into my wallet and give you money." And so what we want to first do is really focus on the severity of their key challenges, the challenges that you can ultimately help solve. And the more you get them discussing those challenges, naturally, the more they're going to see value in your offering. So by really digging into those core challenges, now you're already getting that hurt where they're really feeling, okay, I need to do something about this. It's really important to have that discussion up front. Number three, understand the value of solving those challenges. This is really one of the key pieces here. Because ultimately, your prospect is at point A and they want to go to point B. And you represent that bridge to getting to point B. And so you need to help them determine what is the value of going from point A to point B. So let's say you're dealing with a prospect in the marketing space and they're simply not getting enough leads. They're saying, "Yeah, I really need more leads to my business." And so you talk all about that, and then you say, "Help me understand, what is this challenge costing you right now?" And when they then say, "Oh, well, we're simply losing tons of business at the moment because we don't have enough leads, it's costing us millions of dollars." Understanding that the cost is millions of dollars suddenly makes your solution, which is, let's say, hundreds of thousands of dollars, seem totally reasonable. But it's important that they paint that picture for you so that way you can understand the value, and most importantly, they share with you, to themselves as well, what's the value of solving those challenges. Number four, get commitment to solve the challenges. This is really key because not all challenges are equal. If you run a business yourself, you probably have a lot of challenges in your business. And so you know that not every challenge is created equally. You need to constantly do triage. And so your prospects are doing triage themselves, whether they're consumers or whether they're business owners or whether they work in a large company. They're constantly doing triage and they're deciding which problems are most important. So it's important that you ask questions to really understand their commitment to solving the challenges that you're discussing. Remember, this isn't about their commitment to working with you, it's about their commitment to actually solving the challenges. When you get that commitment, that buy-in, now you know they're much less likely to push back on price. Number 5, discuss budget before presenting. This is one of the key distinctions in my selling system from a lot of other folks out there. You want to have a money conversation up front before you share your solution. So you want to have that budget conversation before you actually get into what the solution looks like, what's the price, all of that. You want to just get a sense of what budget would they be willing to put towards solving these challenges. Ensuring that you have that money conversation up front is almost always going to avoid at the end the situation where they say, I simply can't afford it, because you will have dealt with that up front. Now, there are going to be prospects who simply won't have the budget in order to work with you. But wouldn't you rather know that before you present, at the beginning of an interaction, as opposed to at the end? You want to know before you've gone through, you've put together a proposal, you've done all this stuff, you've had multiple meetings, and at the end they're like, you know what, I just really can't afford this. You want to avoid it by discussing budget before presenting. Number 6, only present to their challenges. There's a very common mistake that I see among salespeople where we get really excited to present our solution. We're excited and we're passionate about what we're selling. And so when we get into the presentation mode, we tend to share all of the features and benefits of what we have to offer. And a lot of times there are benefits and features that you offer that your prospect simply isn't looking for. That is a landmine. If you start presenting benefits or features that the prospect wasn't actually looking for, they didn't mention it in their challenges, now you are likely creating a situation where they're going to actually see less value in what you offer because it's distracting from what their core challenge is. So you want to make sure that you are only presenting the components of your offering that are relevant to the challenges that they mentioned. You don't want to throw the entire kitchen sink at them, just the key things that they mentioned. Stay really focused and on track, because again, once you go really broad and you start presenting all of the different things that your features or your offering has, suddenly they're going to start to be distracted and they're going to start to think, oh, okay, you know what, this is really more than I need. I really don't need all that. And that's where you're likely to get pushback on price. Number 7, hold their feet to the fire. So at the beginning of this training, I shared with you that I would give you some ideas on how to actually deal with someone that actually says, I can't afford it. Remember, once you're in this situation of I can't afford it, you are in trouble, right? I mean, that's pretty obvious, but it's really important that you do everything to avoid it. But let's just say you've done all of those components before and they still say, I can't afford it. This is where you hold their feet to the fire. This is where you don't want to act like a doormat. Instead, you want to be tough. You don't want to be pushy, but you want to be tough. So you want to say something like, George, I appreciate your saying that, but you mentioned at the last meeting that we had that your challenges are costing you a couple $1 million and that you had a budget that was somewhere between $100,000 to $200,000. What I've presented to you, I think, is within that budget, so help me understand maybe what I might have missed here. And now put it back on them to explain what's changed or why they feel that way. If they're saying, I can't afford it, so often that is a proxy for, you know what, I'm just not seeing enough value. So you want to hold their feet to the fire and don't back down here. Don't get really salesy and try to sell them more and try to talk about how great your offering is and how it's such a good offering for them. That's crap. Just be willing to recognize that they've already discussed their challenges, they've discussed the costs of those challenges, and we've discussed some budget. So now help me understand what I might have missed here. So there is how to deal with prospects that say, I can't afford it. And if you enjoyed this video, then I have an awesome free training on the data-driven approach to closing more sales in today's crazy marketplace. Just click right here to get registered instantly. Seriously, just click right here. This is an in-depth training that will help you close more sales at higher prices, all while generating more meetings. Also, if you got some value, please like this video below on YouTube and be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking my face right about here to get access to a new video just like this one each week.